Hello, everyone. I'm joined this evening by Al, Archive Panic. Uh, if you have been watching Marcel's fantastic supernatural or super literary encounters book streams, you'll recognize Al. We've been talking about supernatural encounters every week really, or every couple weeks, and we've been having a great time on there. He's got a YouTube channel called Archive Panic. There's a video on there about the DC comics. Just just one so
Just one
far.
for right now,
Yeah,
maybe.
but you can go check him out. That'll be linked in the description. And I'm really excited to talk about how Al got into Star Wars. So thank you for coming on this evening.
Thank you so much for having me, man. This is great.
Yeah, it's been really cool. I'm so glad you joined for the Super Literary Encounters. It's been a very welcome addition. You've had some great thoughts, and I've really enjoyed getting to hear what you've had to say.
Same here, man. Like, you know, to be fair, absolutely everybody on that panel smokes me in terms of like knowledge of the EU, but like you especially, man. You know some stuff.
Yeah, it's a great panel. Marcel, Ken, Alex, Max, all of those guys on there, absolutely terrific people. And in well, depending on when I post this, it might be this evening. We'll be back again with Supernatural Encounters on Wednesday evening. So to begin this interview, I guess the first question is, what was your first memory of Star Wars?
That's actually very tough because my fandom for Star Wars goes back before like my episodic memory. So my first like memory where I can vaguely recall details was this is gonna get wild right off the bat, but was 9/11 where my parents took me, threw me into the room that I'm in right now,
Mm,
and said, "You're going to watch cartoons because there is nothing else on television. You're going to watch Scooby Doo because there's nothing else on television that is not related to this event, and we're not letting you see it."
wow.
So I was, what would I have been? I was super young. I was born 1998. So like barely, maybe like not even 4. No,
Yeah.
couldn't have been. Yeah, no. So yeah, that was my first. That's the first memory I can recall. Star Wars predates that by a decent margin.
Mm.
So the first memory I have of Star Wars probably probably watching the Phantom Menace with a bunch of my dad's work friends.
Mm.
Um, it has to be that because that was like we had just got a new VCR and I popped in
Mm.
Phantom Menace, so
Nice.
that
So
has to be it. So that's like 2002, maybe.
okay. So episode one was your introduction, not the original trilogy. You started with the prequels then.
Maybe again. This again. I genuinely don't remember what my introduction to Star Wars was. I think it would be fair to say it was probably Phantom Menace because that was the most recent.
Yeah.
But it's also entirely possible that it was the original trilogy. I just don't remember that far back.
So it's pretty much been with you since you were really young.
Since as far as I can remember, I've always loved Star Wars.
That's awesome. So were you just originally immediately just captivated by it?
Oh yeah, I remember around the time of Attack of the Clones. Probably would have been 2002. My mom went all out on Christmas, and she got me like half of the line for whatever toy line that was that year.
Right.
I had the Nexu and the Reek. I don't think I had the other. What's
The
it called?
Acklay.
The Acklay. Yes, thank you. But I did have those two, and I had most of the figures for that year.
Was that called Power of the Jedi or something like that? I
I think that was
think.
the one right after that. I think it was
Okay.
either called Saga or just didn't have a title. It was just Star Wars. Um, And that's when they were all in like terrible pre-posed positions. Like if you ever,
Yeah,
yeah, I mean, there were all those. But at the time, I was like, "Oh, this is awesome." Now I would be like, "Man, why would you do this?"
it
But
was like I have two of those figures as well, Shakti and Luminara Unduli, and they've got like you said, they're just like got these big flowing capes, so they're not very mobile,
I
right?
think Luminar is doing like this, and she's like, "Yeah,
Yeah.
it's terrible." I remember I really liked Kit Fisto for some reason. For some reason, Kit Fisto, that was my guy. It's like he's my favorite. I don't know anything about him other than he smiles at C-3PO when he pushes him down. It's like, oh, that's awesome. That's all I need. That's all I needed as a child.
Oh yeah.
I think my first favorite character in Star Wars was Han Solo. I want to say it was
Okay.
Han Solo, but again,
Nice.
at that point, everyone was my favorite. If you were in Star Wars, you were my favorite character. That's my
Gotcha.
answer. Um,
I mean, that's the right answer for favorite character too. Just all of them.
Pretty much, especially at that time, just all of them.
So, would you play with these action figures then, despite their pre-posed positions?
Yeah, it was hard to do council scenes with those. I remember I had to learn. I made myself learn all the voices for all the different characters that I had. The reason I remember the two-headed announcer at all is because I had his figure came with Jabba, so that's how I had Jabba. And I had him,
Okay.
so I was like, I gotta learn how to make this guy's voice. It's Skywalker. Un junta kachinki. Whatever. That stuff.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Fun memories right from the get go. So you were really like involved with the action figure side of things, then the merchandise side of things, as well as the movies, just
Absolutely.
from the start.
Absolutely, absolutely. A very one of the so when the Clone Wars multimedia project kicked off,
Mm.
I don't think I had a lot of those, but I had enough for those to be like prominent in my memory because I remember I had Kit Fisto. Pretty sure I had Anakin. I had a bunch of the animated figures, like Fordo
From
and
Clone Wars 2002.
yep, and a couple others. And I had the gunship because I really wanted that gunship. I was like, dang, that's I want that one. Um, trying to remember. I didn't really like vehicles. I was like,
Mm.
I wanted the Millennium Falcon. I wanted an X-wing, a Y-wing, a regular Tie Fighter, and Darth Vader's Tie Fighter.
Yeah.
And that was kind of it, and the gunship. And I was like, yeah, that's good enough for me. I was never really big into the vehicles, but I really liked all the characters.
Mm. It's really cool that you had some of those Jendi Tartakovsky figures. I love the style of them. But that was my next question was going to be, when did you become aware of this universe, this expanded universe outside of the films? And Clone Wars, Tartakovsky's Clone Wars from Cartoon Network, sounds like that was there really early on.
So I was thinking about this earlier when you were telling me about the topics, and I kind of realized that at no point did I ever distinguish between like the expanded universe and the movies because
Right.
of the Genndy Tartakovsky Clone Wars. Um, I don't. You'd have to tell me how the timeline works out in terms of like publication,
Mm.
but I think the very first piece of EU material I ever had a hand on was Jedi Mace Windu, the comic.
Okay. The comic, yeah.
I don't know what year. I don't know when that came out, but I think it's that.
That
Um,
that must have been 2002, 2003, somewhere
yes,
right in there.
somebody will have the answer because if that predates the show at all, then that was it, and that was the first comic book I ever read, or at least the first one I can remember. Maybe some issue of Aquaman before, because my sister's boyfriend at the time loved Aquaman, wanted
Mm.
to get me to read Aquaman. So there
Nice.
it could be that, but I don't remember that, so that doesn't count. I very much remember the Mace Windu issue.
So
So
have you gotten into comics in general
oh,
after first
absolutely.
reading Star Wars comics? Because that's how it
Yes.
was for me as well. I had not read a comic before I read Star Wars comics. I was just interested in Star Wars. Uh, Opened up a Star Wars comic, and now I've read all these other comics too. So that was the same case scenario for you.
Sort of. So the very first comic I read was a Star Wars comic. It took me a long time to get into Star Wars comics, whereas I got into like Batman and Spider-Man and all those characters way earlier. So it took me a few years to get into Star Wars comics, but technically that is where I started.
That's awesome. And Jedi Mace Windu is a really cool place to start. You've got Kakruk, Sora Bulk, all those side characters in there that are quite important.
Well, that's where I made that connection. As a kid, I saw Kakruk. I was like, "Oh, this guy's awesome! Look how cool he looks." And then I watched the show, and
Yeah.
there he was, and I was like, "Oh, so like that happened? That's real. That all happened." Because
Yeah.
the show is coming out, and this was the build up to episode 3, um, and the show ends with basically the opening to episode 3. It's like, oh, so
Yep.
just everything counts. That's just
Yeah.
how it is.
That
So
is awesome. So right from the beginning, there wasn't really this concept of there's Star Wars and there's the Star Wars expanded universe. It was just all Star Wars.
yeah, pretty much.
That's great. I would have loved to exist in a time when that was the case. It was just all part of it, you know.
I mean, I wasn't a book reader. I mean, I read books of, but like I wasn't like a expanded universe novel reader at the time. So
Yeah.
like I didn't know about like MedStar or any of that stuff. Although I probably would have liked it.
Mhm.
But I did know about the comics and about the show.
That's
And I do know
awesome.
that my cat is going nuts. 1 second. You better want to go out. Be gone. Good. No, in or out. You have to choose. She will not choose, and I will have to do that in another 10 minutes.
Okay. No worries. We love animals on this channel. In fact, the second episode of this series of EU interviews with people I did was delayed by about 30 minutes because my dog kept nudging my computer. And
Wow.
every time I was trying to get it to go, my dog would come back over to see me, put his snout on the camera, and that was a little delay there. Pets are amazing. They're a lot of fun, but they can be
We love her,
troublesome.
but she is very annoying. Yeah, I am talking about you. Quit doing that. Oh, whatever.
So you were there before Revenge of the Sith. What was the atmosphere like at the time with another movie coming out? Was it quite electric to be a Star Wars fan at that time, as I'd imagine, with that lead up to Revenge of the Sith you were talking about?
So I didn't quite I didn't quite follow what was going on at the time. Like in my child brain, I was like, there just isn't a 3 because as far as I knew, episode 1 and 2 had always existed.
Yeah.
And episode 3 just didn't. I was like, that I want episode 3. So in my mind, I was like, this is like the lost movie that'll never be made, even though episode 2 came out when I was alive and I should have remembered it, but whatever. I remember I was sitting with my sister's now husband in their apartment, and he came up to me and said, "Take a look at this." And I saw the very first advertisement for episode 3. It was a newspaper ad that just said Star Wars episode 3 coming May 2005. And I was like, oh, that's awesome. And then slowly you started seeing you saw the show come back for one.
Hmm.
And then I remember we went down the toy aisle and they had all of the Revenge of the Sith figures. And I looked at my grandmother and she was like, 10. That's it. 10. That's it. Because they were like $3 at the time. So that,
Yeah.
it wasn't like breaking the bank, but still, I was like, oh, yes. I had them before anybody else. I was real proud of that as a 6-year-old or however old I was.
Nice. There were a lot of Wookiees, I think, in that toy line.
Yeah, I remember. I think I mostly focused on like Jedi Masters because I remember I had
Nice.
Plo Koon and I definitely had a new Shock T because I hated the Saga version. Even
The
as a kid, I
Attack of
was
the
like, "This
Clones
sucks."
one.
So I was like, I need a new Shock T. There she was, and a Padme because I never could get a hold of a Padme as a kid. So, she just wasn't in my area, I guess.
So as time has gone on, have you kept up with kind of the toy collecting aspect of Star Wars?
Not really. What I do collect is mostly Transformers at this point, and even
Nice.
that is like it's more pick and choose now that it's gotten to be a little bit too expensive for my tastes.
Like $30 a figure or more.
Yeah, it's starting to become like that. All right, this is like one every couple months sort of deal now. Um,
Nice.
I do keep up with a little bit with Black Series, but only because they've started to actually give me things I want, like Star Killer and Mara Jade, and now the Heir to the Empire set.
Oh yeah, I saw that. That's very exciting news.
I do want that, but um,
As soon as I saw that, I was like, ah, I've been trying to stop buying action figures.
I like I've said I'm quitting Black Series about 5 times now, and every time they're like, "Oh, but don't you want a Fordo or a O3 Grievous or Ayla Sakura?" And I was like, "All right, all right, all right, okay." At some
Shut up and
point,
take my money. You
at
know.
some point, I will be able to stop myself, but it's not. It is not this day.
Right. Yeah. So you were there from the beginning with the show, the comics. When did you start to get more hardcore into the Star Wars comics after your original introduction with Jedi Mace Windu?
Years later, years and years later, I started like actively collecting comics roughly around 2009. Like that's when I started picking up stuff, and then I got really into it around the time of Dark Knight Rises, because I
Okay.
started really get into Batman comics. And then a few more years later, and I picked up Dark Empire. I really like that. Um, and I think I sold it at some point because I had to go back and buy it again. Either I sold it or I gave it to somebody and it was gone forever. But I had to get it again. Um, but it wasn't until like 2019 that I started to be like, I'm going to read the EU properly. I'm gonna go through and I'm just gonna go through all of these stories and read everything. And that's when I started to actually get into the comics and start to learn things about something that for a long time was just over there. It was like I didn't consider the Star Wars expanded universe not canon or anything. I was just like, that's just another aspect of Star Wars that's over there.
Yeah.
Sort of like TCW. As a kid, I really didn't
Mm,
connect with TCW, so I was like, well, that's Star
yeah.
Wars, but over there.
Gotcha. Yeah. That's something that a lot of people have ended up boxing out in their minds. I think over in one corner.
Well, for me, it was because it didn't line up with the '03 Clone Wars, and that was my show. That was like, oh, that's my favorite. That was like my favorite Star Wars thing ever for a long time. I was
Yeah.
like, if that doesn't line up, then I don't like it.
Yeah. Exactly. I think when TCW was originally kind of talked about before its release, I think they kind of like pitched it as like a continuation of the show
That's how I saw it.
almost, but then they like almost pretty much rebooted it, you know? So it's just kind of
I,
hard.
I remember. Now this was 2008, so this is so long ago, and I think I was 10, so I don't remember my feelings quite as well now. But I remember being like, this is just like this is not what I want as a
Mm,
kid. I was like, I really wanted to watch that Kit Fisto episode, of course,
yeah.
and I really like the stuff with Plo Koon, but then everything else was like, I don't. Oh, one of my problems is I as a kid I didn't really like Anakin, so I was like
Mm,
more Anakin. I was like, I don't want that. Give me the other characters. Give me Shock T. Give me Kiadi Mundi. Which now, because I like the expanded universe, I get all of those characters.
yes.
I get to understand who they are. Whereas at the time, I was like, Anakin, go away. You're already Darth Vader. That's where I like you as Darth Vader, not as
Gotcha.
whiny boy. But
Yeah. So what prompted this decision to like make a concerted effort to go through and read it all? What led to that?
so it's sort of a long process. Um, it started in 2015. Okay, actually, I should back up a little bit. In 2012, I kind of fell out of love with Star Wars.
Okay.
Right around the time of the Disney purchase, I was like, bought by Disney, more like I don't care. I didn't. I think I was in 8th grade, and I remember talking with my friends, and I was like, "That's lame. That sucks." Um, and then around 2015, the movie was coming out. I was like, I need to, I want to get back into Star Wars. So I
Yeah.
rewatched the original trilogy with basically fresh eyes because I hadn't seen them in 3 or 4 years at that point.
Mm.
And I fell in love all over again. And I watched the Clone Wars cartoon. And I fell in love all over again. And I watched the prequels, and I was like, oh, these are a little rougher than I imagined, but I still love them.
So it was like a second coming to the franchise.
Yes, it was. It was like I found that, and the EU had been decanonized or whatever at that point, and I remember exactly where I was when it happened. I was in my high school library doing something on one of the computers, and I had the notification on my phone, and I was like, "Well, that sucks," because I liked all these things like the Clone Wars show and Force Unleashed,
Yeah,
things like that. But I wasn't, it wouldn't be the devastating blow it would be now, obviously.
yeah,
Um, but in 2015, I didn't, it would just decan. And I was like, oh, that sucks. But I'm up for the new things, and I read a little bit of the Marvel comic, and I was like, this is terrible. I was like, I'm totally against this.
that's
Admittedly, at the time,
Jason Aaron's run.
yes. Now, admittedly, I've went back and I reread it. And it's not that bad. I don't know. I don't know why I was so against it at the time. Probably because at the time I was just so against Marvel. Just everything Marvel put out, I was like, no, get that out of here. That was when Mark Waid was writing Daredevil, and I was in this phase of like, no, Daredevil has to be dark. Daredevil has to be this.
Yeah,
And now I've calmed down on that. I swear.
the 2010s was kind of a interesting time for Marvel and some of the directions it took in its comics.
At the time, I was so offended by how they were treating X-Men and Daredevil, which were the two things that I loved the most, and
Yeah.
Spider-Man. But like Spider-Man had been actively ruined for like years at that point.
Oh yeah.
I was like, I hate all of it. Everything Marvel puts out sucks. So, but I've since stopped being that like whiny. I swear. I hope. But I remember the comics just didn't do anything for me. I wanted to check out the Lando and I never did. I bought it at an Ollie's a few years ago, but I still haven't read it because
I bought that comic at an Ollie's myself. They had a abundance of overstock on that comic apparently.
it was like that and the first volume of Star Wars and like Poe Dameron.
Mm.
It was just like all of those. I don't think I bought Poe Dameron. Yeah. Anyway, so but in 2015, I'm like, all right, I'm giving Star Wars another chance. I wanna love it again. And then the Force Awakens comes out, and I didn't like it.
Mm.
I really didn't like it. At the time, I kind of said, oh, it was okay, but it wasn't okay. I really didn't like it. It kind of offended me. I was like, this blows. So then the next year, Rogue One came out, and I actually don't really like Rogue One either. That's my hot take, is I don't really care for that movie either. And then the next year, The Last Jedi came out, and that was for me the last straw. I was like, all right, I'm back to being done with Star Wars. I don't need any of this. I am sick of this.
Star Wars: The Last Straw.
Pretty much. And at that point, I watched Solo with my dad the next year, like after it had been confirmed as being a huge failure.
Mm.
So I didn't really feel bad for that. But I was out of Star Wars at that point. I was like, this is all dumb.
Checked out right then with Solo in 2018 then?
Well, I even liked Solo. Okay, I liked it better than the other movies, but I was just like, and what else is Star Wars going to offer me that I want at this point? But I had gotten back into watching versus videos on YouTube, which is something I did right before Disney bought out Star Wars. I remember that, and I was like, "Oh, these are really fun." And then I got into some lore videos, like specifically Eckhart's Ladder. That's the one that always stands out in my mind. And then I came across Matt Wilkins' defense of the EU. I know, right? And I watched his EU videos, but I didn't get into it just yet. I was like, I'm still on the fence about this whole thing. Star Wars has burned me a lot recently. I don't know if I really want to dive back into this stuff. And then the next year, The Rise of Skywalker came out, and I had officially had it. I remember I was in the comic book store talking with the owner, and I was like, over. I will not watch this movie. This one is too bad. I will not do this. But but I was inspired to buy Dark Empire again. I was like,
Mm.
I want to try. I want to see. I want to compare it. And it went from I want to buy Dark Empire again to I want to read a few of the novels, and then it became I want to read all the novels, and then it became I want to read all the novels and all the comics, and then it became I want to read all the novels, all the comics, play the games, and then it just became all right, we're just doing the whole thing. We're doing everything. So I read Darth Bane, and I reconfirmed my decision, and I didn't stop. I never stopped after that.
Amazing. That's great. So many people I talked to like came in through Matt Wilkins. Like I've been watching Matt since 2017 when I became a Star Wars EU fan, when I got my first novel, and just it's amazing kind of what he did for the community when there's such a like collective feeling of loss with Star Wars as a brand. He kind of like picked up a bunch of broken souls and was like, let me guide you down the EU river, you know?
I needed that. I definitely needed that at the time. It was supposed to be my project for 2020, which it ended up being. It was just that was that was like a year of like all sorts of crazy stuff happening.
Yeah.
But it ended up just continuing into now. Now with Supernatural Encounters, which is buried over here.
Yeah. So that was, speaking of Supernatural Encounters, that's beautiful. I've got my copies are in the other room. Now that's one question that I had. When did you become aware of Supernatural Encounters, and what was your initial reaction to it? And what led you to becoming so interested in it?
Sorry. So it would have had to have been Maxine, strictly Star Wars lives that I found out about it. It has to have been.
Yeah.
Because she was posting about that all the time. If Matt Wilkins mentioned it in a video, then I guess technically that would count. But in terms of being aware of what it had to have been Maxine.
Nice.
But the interest came when I watched the first Superlit panel. And I was like, this sounds actually really cool and really interesting. And I talked to Marcel afterwards on the Discord, and he was like, if you want to join us, catch up and join the next one.
Yeah.
So I started reading. I started really loving it, and I really was excited to get on, and I got on the panel, and haven't looked back since, once again.
That's awesome. And man, it's such a great book. It feels like everything in the EU kind of leads to it in a way. And it's been great seeing the positive reception to it, because Joe Bongiorno is such a nice guy, worked so hard on this, so it deserves all the love and praise that it's getting now at this point, I think.
If nothing else, Joe has maintained probably the best, most accurate, most down to the chapter timeline in existence for Star Wars. I can't think of anybody who has better like goes down to the chapters. Yeah. I don't know anybody else who does that. Maybe there's somebody else. Feel free to shout them out. But man, that's dedication. I
do not know of anybody else either. I've been working on my own timeline project since 2019, so I was like cross-referencing with all these different timelines. So I used Wikipedia's timeline, Utini's timeline, StarWarsReadingOrder.com, StarWarsTimeline.net with Joe, Callum John's timeline, Alex Starr's timeline, Matt Wilkins' timeline on the ExpandedUniverse.com. I checked out all these different timelines. A lot of them conflict with each other, but there was only one that went chapter by chapter, and that was Joe's timeline. Just absolutely incredible.
Even though of course I'm a Matt Wilkins fan, I do think that he still has the best timeline. Joe does.
Yeah.
He really just completely knocked that out of the park. And then to do this, to bring about that behemoth that I cannot bring myself to bring back over here because it's buried again. And I keep bringing this up on Superlit, but it's like if Joe just read my mind, it's like, what is this guy not like about the EU? What are the most necessary retcons in this guy's opinion? Let me go through one by one and make sure we have all these retcons ready to go. So,
yeah, I mean, he takes parts of the EU that felt inconsequential, or felt silly and wacky, and just kind of brings it together and like gives it a hug. It says you're important too. We didn't forget about you. Brings them all in.
Like I would forget about all of the Devil World stuff. I'd be like, no,
Yeah.
that's over there. That's over there with
With
TCW. They're hanging out.
TCW, yeah,
But he's like,
TCW
no,
and Devil Worlds.
like no, we're everything. We're doing maximalism. We are doing bringing up the Dooku clone in Yoda Dark Rendezvous with no context whatsoever. We're doing that level of maximalism.
Yeah, the Dooku doppelganger of a classic character for the ages. So in your journey since 2020, where you've been trying to read it all, or 2019 a bit before that, um, how close have you gotten to reading it all? How much have you consumed in this amount of time?
I am currently here, so I'm trying to
Nice.
Survivor's Quest. I'm chipping away at. It always takes me a long time to read Zahn stuff, but I
Yeah.
am currently on. I think this is book 7 of
Yep.
Young Jedi Knights. I always
The
forget the
start
order.
of the second arc.
Yes, Shadow Academy just went down.
Yeah.
But yeah, I hope to finish Survivor's Quest at some point. But man, that said, the last Zahn that I had, I listened to the audiobook for Hand of Thrawn duology, and
Yeah.
it almost dethroned Darth Bane as my favorite novel. Almost. Vision of the Future came that close
Wow, that's
to
awesome.
overthrowing Darth Bane and Darth Plagueis, to be fair.
So Hand of Thrawn's just right there up at the top.
Almost did it, but I'd have to reread both. I'd have to reread both. I can't. I don't want to quite say that Hand of Thrawn did it just yet. And
It's
I didn't
like,
really. I liked the Thrawn trilogy a lot, but I did not like it as much as I liked Hand of Thrawn.
okay, interesting. That's super cool. It's often when picking favorite EU books, it's like picking between just favorite children, something like that. It's just like you feel bad anyways. So like when you sit down and you're like, all right, I'm gonna rank this, you just end up feeling really bad at the end because it's just so hard.
I keep the tier list on tierlist.com going, and man, I've wanted to pull Yoda Dark Rendezvous and Medstar up into S tier for a long time, but I need to reread those because they might be S tiers. I might
Yoda
not be
Dark
giving.
Rendezvous is Joe Bongiorno's favorite expanded universe novel
Oh,
in
that
the
sounds about
EU.
right. That's
Yeah.
that is like I'm a well-known Yoda hater, and even for me, I'm like, okay, I really like this book. I really like this Yoda. If only he was portrayed like this in every single Star
Yes.
Wars media, I'd be like, this is a
Yes.
great character.
For sure. So on Young Jedi Knights, as you start the Diversity Alliance arc, how have you liked the series so far? Kevin J. Anderson is somewhat of a little bit of a controversial figure within the EU. I'm a big KJA fan, but he's not for everyone. How have you liked Young Jedi Knights?
Well, for Kevin J. Anderson as a whole, this is a real controversy. I like parts of Jedi Academy more than I like Thrawn trilogy. Not as a whole. I as a whole, Thrawn is definitely better, and it
Yeah,
definitely fits with the Star Wars aesthetic and the Star Wars like feel more. But in terms of like moments, I'm like, oh yeah, that was awesome. I have more of those from Jedi Academy, even though it's more uneven,
totally.
and there's a lot of stuff in there that's like, ah, that's sort of weird. But a lot of my I kind of like Jedi Academy in ways more than Thrawn.
It's got
Um,
some really epic moments. The showdown with the spirit of Exar Kun, just so many memorable moments in there. And
Destroying
Gideus,
Karida. Oh, I didn't know about that before. That was one of the things that I hadn't seen before. I didn't know that Karida got blown up. I was like,
yeah,
no, you're not. You can't do that. There's no way. Oh, they did. Oh, it's so cool.
yeah. That sadly, a couple things were spoiled by my viewing of Matt Wilkins, but yeah, there's so many mind blowing moments in that trilogy.
It really,
Uh,
I do think it's heavily underrated. Now, Dark Saber, I was a little bit more harsh on. I don't think it's bad. I just think it's sort of mid.
I'm there with you. Darksaber was oddly my least favorite of the kind of unofficial Callista trilogy. I prefer Hambley's books more, which should maybe tell you something about that one.
It just, there were parts of it I liked, but just overall, it's sort of like the Cestus Deception,
Yeah,
where I liked parts of Cestus Deception really well, but like as a whole, it was just sort of it just kept going, and I was not on board for the ride. Like
yeah.
that scene with
You were an
Mephisto.
unwilling passenger.
Oh yeah, especially when they were like dancing in that book. I was like, can we stop?
Yeah,
Can we do
yeah.
something else?
Because I was gonna ask you about Cestus Deception when you mentioned that early on Kit Fisto was your guy with the action figure. Because I also am a huge fan of Kit Fisto. I've got his Lego minifigure back here, and Kit's a great character. But then, so I was excited to read Cestus Deception. I can read a book in 3 days. That book took me a month and a half.
I,
So the Kit Fisto stuff was the best part, but the writing, I don't know.
Man, I'm in the same boat. I had as a kid, I had the hot toy of Kit Fisto from episode 3. I still have it somewhere. I think it's in like my closet or something. But it's awesome. I remember that was the Kit Fisto Lego was like the thing I wanted most for Christmas, whatever year that came out, 2008 or whatever that was. And I was really excited to read Cestus. I was like, oh, Kit Fisto's right on the cover. And then I started reading it, and it took me 6 months to finish it because every time I started getting going, I was like, oh man, I could be doing anything else. It might have been more like 3 months, but it felt like an entire year's worth of time just slipped by me. I was like, oh, this one's painful.
As someone who's still in school, the way that I would describe it is there's a difference between pleasure reading and reading for homework. It felt like reading for homework.
And I don't even like I don't hate Cestus Deception. I think Cestus Deception is fine. I think it has its moments.
Yeah.
The stuff with Django Tat, I think.
Yeah. Yep.
That was really cool. Kit Fisto obviously was awesome.
Obi-Wan's pretty well written.
Yeah, but as a whole, it just sort of happened. Now, then I read Jedi Trial, and I realized that I had been in good with the Cestus Deception. I was like, man, if only I could go back to the days of the Cestus Deception.
Cestus Deception, high literature compared to Jedi Trial.
Yeah, Jedi Trial. I don't really want to like drag on these books too much, but like Jedi Trial. That one was like that and Rogue Planet. But I don't have any of the context for Rogue Planet, so I feel bad judging that one
because of New Jedi Order. It's New Jedi Order book 0, basically.
Yeah. So I was just not into Rogue Planet, and I'm gonna reread that once I finish New Jedi Order.
I really like Rogue Planet, but I'm in the minority on that one.
I freely admit that I was not in the right spot. That was I should have just skipped it. But with Jedi Trial, there's no excuse. Like it's not like if you say, oh well, what's his name? Halcyon is in it. That that doesn't help it either way. That actually makes it worse.
And I think one of its issues for me is how it muddies the continuity, including TCW in the EU and even without. It messes with things.
It's just not. It's not good. It's not good, and it's really boring. So. There are 2 books. I've skipped a couple of EU books. Sometimes for time, sometimes it's like, I feel like I should read this later. Like specifically with Outbound Flight and with stuff like that, I was like, I need to just read this later. This is not right for now. And then like the last book in the EU, the Honor Among Thieves, like I'm gonna save that. I'm gonna save that for another time. With Dawn of the Jedi, I know Marcel's gonna hate that, but one of these days. Dawn of the Jedi and Imperial Commando, I was like, I will not read another page of this. This is unholy. Imperial Commando, when they started arguing about who was going to get the groceries, I was like, I'm done. I will never touch this again. The only way you will ever get me to finish this is Tamora Morrison does the audiobook. Even then, I'm probably going to bow out around the same spot. So Jedi Trial did technically get me to finish. So that should be a point in its favor.
You were able to finish the book.
I was able to finish
something.
It I think it was short. Was it short? I remember it's thin. Did I bring it down here? I did. Oh, I knew I had to bring it for some reason.
Nice. Yeah, it's one of the more thin books in the EU.
333 pages. So that's not too bad.
No.
Oh no, this is Order 66, not Imperial Commando. Whatever, they're all terrible. It doesn't matter.
The Republic Commando books, I liked book 1.
Love book 1.
I was iffy on book 2. Book 3, there was a bigger drop off, and then 4 and 5 were down in the gutter. But Matthew Stover, before decanonization, was supposed to write the Imperial Commando 501st sequel when Travis bailed out. So if Stover had written the end of the series, I feel like it would make it worth it to read those last novels just to get to that final one. But since that didn't happen, and there's no ending, and they just get so like arguing about groceries.
Admittedly, so I get this was another twist that I managed to miss. Spoiler for anybody who cares about Republic Commando, which I'm sure plenty of people do. Etane getting killed. I was like, oh, that's like a series. That was a pretty good move.
Yeah,
and then bringing in Scout,
choked up in that bit.
Yeah, because I didn't really mind Etane that much. Looking back on it, she is really weird, but she's really weird. But at the time I was like, that's sad. That was a pretty brave move to kill off one of the main characters.
Yeah.
To actually kill off someone for Order 66, who would guess?
Because the EU has like 300 Jedi who survived. The thousands of Jedi who died are just all the unnamed ones who we never meet.
To be fair, I've gotten into that argument enough with people. I generally don't mind it, but for a book called Order 66, come on now, you got to do it. You can't. Yeah, you can't have any survivors for that one. Dawn of the Jedi here. I agreed. Marcel wants to do a video once we're done with Superlit about he's going to convince me this is good, and
he better convince me too. It's my worst favorite book in the EU. I've read every EU novel and comic, and it's dead last for me.
If I were to finish it, it would probably be that it's genuinely either that or Imperial Commando. At least with Into the Void. No, never mind. I was going to say they don't argue about groceries, but like they don't argue about anything. Nothing happens. It just yeah. But
it makes me very happy to hear that. I've complained about Into the Void for many a year now. One of my really good friends who I met up with in person, who's an EU friend who I met online, he's my age, a year younger, and he got into the EU as recently as 2022. He has a huge collection. He has like everything in the EU now. He's read through a lot of it. But he started with Dawn of the Jedi Into the Void, and he almost stopped. He almost was like, I'm done. The EU's not for me. The only reason he stopped is like he looked up a list. He looked up worst and best EU novels. He found a live stream a year ago that me and Marcel did, and saw that I had put Dawn of the Jedi Into the Void last, and he was like, oh, maybe there's hope. But he was almost out on that. And so, yeah, Dawn of the Jedi Into the Void's a tough one.
This is another thing. Now, unfortunately, because of the framing story, it doesn't really work. But Supernatural Encounters also did me the favor of this not being the first EU novel, kind of, sort of, anymore. Yeah. The framing story kills it because it is set in like the present day or whatever. But man, this being the introduction for people is I would not. I can't think of a single thing, a single instance where I would recommend this to somebody ever, especially not first.
Yeah.
But enough of bashing on poor old Dawn of the Jedi. We'll do that plenty with Marcel at some point in the future.
Absolutely. But it's definitely interesting. I would argue that the Eruption short story by John Ostrander is probably better than the novel itself. But which is kind of sad. But moving on from the rare instances of negative within the EU here, there's a ton of good stuff as well.
So plenty of good.
what's your favorite novel in the EU? It toss up between Bane, Plagueis, Hand of Thrawn, all those in the mix up there.
So I do have I should just bring up the tier list. That would probably be easier than me trying to like uh bring about this through magic. Where is it? There it is. Come here. All right. So
You can share your screen if you'd like, and I can put it up. There's a
okay.
present tab, and you can.
Sure. Let's do that. Okay. There we go. You see? You still with me?
Yep. Sorry.
Very good.
Okay, so there's the tier list.
Yeah. So let me zoom in. That should be enough. So for me, Darth Bane is still on top. That was the first novel. That was the first EU novel I read.
Nice.
I did read a little bit of it at some point because I owned it way before I started reading the EU properly. I remember reading a little bit of it, but I don't think I finished it.
Mm.
But when I actually like gave it a shot and actually read it, it sold me on all this other stuff down here.
Yeah.
Darth Plagueis was similar. Darth Plagueis almost dethroned Bane too, but for me, the thing that I really liked about Darth Plagueis on the first read through was the characterization for Sidious and all of the tie-ins to the stuff that came out during the Phantom Menace media blitz. Because I'd read all that in the lead up to reading Darth Plagueis. I was like, oh, look at all this cool stuff.
So satisfying.
And now, having read way more, I go back and I was like, oh, there's even more stuff that I had no idea about. So that was really cool. Vision of the Future. Oh my god, Vision of the Future is just great. Like I came in with almost no expectations because I was mid about. I mean, Thrawn trilogy is like right here, so it's not like I'm mid about it. But I like the Thrawn trilogy, but it wasn't my number one like a lot of people's. And I'd never heard anything good, specifically about Hand of Thrawn. I just remember, oh, it exists. It's over there.
Yeah.
So when I read,
oddly forgotten.
It is, and it's a shame because now I think Spectre of the Past is really good. I don't think it's nearly as good as Vision of the Future, in my opinion. Again, Vision of the Future, maybe on reread could end up right there, but for now we'll keep it here.
It basically is tying up the entire Bantam era of like Star Wars, like bringing in X-wing, Thrawn trilogy, like all of that stuff kind of culminates there with that duology.
I love the way Han, Luke, and Leia are written. I love how Lando's written. I love that they bring in all the characters from the Bantam era, and I love that they don't try. They don't even try, or Zahn doesn't even try to make you think Thrawn is actually back. It is right from the start established. This guy is an actor. This is the Imperials are spinning plates until they can figure out a real plan. I love that. I would have hated if the books were it's pretending to be Thrawn right up until the last 50 pages when you find out no, it was an actor this whole time.
Yeah.
It was such a good choice.
Yeah, and it's different than that in Young Jedi Knights with Shadow Academy, where like it's pretty much the opposite of that. So nice to have some difference then, so that it wasn't mirroring each other too closely there.
Absolutely. And I liked all the Imperial stuff. I thought that was all really interesting. I liked Pelion on the first read through of Thrawn trilogy, but I really liked him in Hand of Thrawn. I thought he was way more interesting.
So he's kind of untethered from his Sherlock. Basically, it's like Watson getting his time in the spotlight.
Right. Kenobi. Kenobi. So, if I had to go favorite characters in all of Star Wars, Luke, Bane, Kenobi, Vader, probably. This is my favorite Kenobi story of all time. Yeah. This is just like the perfect Obi-Wan story. I love all the characters, and Obi-Wan's in most of it, but he's not in all of it. He's not in like
Mm.
every page, but he's in just enough, and you get just enough to feel the town and all the
Mhm.
and I love the stuff with the Tuscans. Um,
Oh,
I
so
love
good.
I love sympathetic Tuscans. I don't like when there's they're just mindless savages. No,
Mm.
there's a culture here that's being destroyed, and that's not right. And Obi-Wan recognized that, and Anna recognized that. Whew, so good. Especially her.
There's so many good parts to that. I always ask people this who like Kenobi because I perceive the ending to be very dark. Because Obi-Wan sends the family, spoilers for Kenobi, that he's kind of grown very close to Alderaan. Now we know what happens to Alderaan. So did he send the Caldwells to go blow up? And was he hoping to maybe reconnect when he and Luke are on their way with the Falcon to Alderaan? Were all the voices screaming out in pain? Did he hear the Caldwells there? What do you think about that? I asked John Jackson Miller this question. He said you could interpret it that way, which was kind of a non-answer. But what do you think of that? Do you think the Caldwells live? Did they get off planet, or did Obi-Wan accidentally send people he cared about to their death?
So my inner romantic says no, they went somewhere else afterwards.
Yeah.
But I'm not gonna lie. I think my answer is they got blowed up. They are
Yeah.
gone. Because why would you leave Alderaan? If going from Tatooine to Alderaan is like the biggest upgrade in the history of
Yes.
upgrades, why would you ever go anywhere else? They are dust now, which is sad. I at the time I was like, well, it's 20 years in between. Maybe they found something better. Did they though? Probably not. Which is a little bit sad. That's a little bit of a dark note to end on. But
Yeah.
I mean, at the time they didn't blow up. Maybe it's still a possibility. Maybe if the EU ever gets continued, John Jackson Miller can write the story of when they came back to Tatooine to hang out with Obi-Wan and then went somewhere else or something. Or probably not. Probably
I
not.
mean, after I'd read Kenobi, when I watched A New Hope for the next time, and the scene where Obi-Wan realizes that Alderaan blows up, I was watching that scene thinking in the context, having just read Kenobi, like, did the Caldwells just die? And it made me like almost like tear up at like the thought of it. I
Yeah.
think it adds a lot of weight there, if true. And I think there's a lot of credence that would suggest it. Like uh, Annaline's children are both young, but they're becoming adults. So if they got married to some Alderanian, had kids, why would they leave? You know?
I think you're right, man. I don't think they survived. Which I mean, that's sad, but that's hey, that is the point. Like so many people, Bail Organa, great character.
Yeah.
He goes. Everyone but Ferris Olin, pretty much. And Ferris Olin doesn't have his little hero moment in Rebel Force, but
Yeah.
the Kamasi, whose name I don't remember, the Jedi.
Yeah.
Um,
Not Elagos. What's his name? He was in the Michael Stackpole story Illusion with Isla Sakura.
I'm never gonna
Um,
think of it. That I'm never gonna be able to pull that one out.
I'll look it up real quick. Use the powers of Wikipedia
Fair enough.
to find him.
I will
Yeah,
vamp
his
about. Oh, there he is.
Yelenic Itkla. Yelenic Itkla.
Hellenic, yes, because that's in I Jedi. Yes, okay.
Yes.
Um, where's I Jedi? I Jedi is in B. That's fair. But that's I think I want to say it was the first Superlit panel I made this comparison on, but now I actually remember it better, and I'm not just shaking and hoping that I can spit out the words before I devolve into stuttering. In Clone Wars Digest Volume 2, this is '03 Clone Wars.
Okay.
There is a story. There's a story about old Ben, and he was a good friend, and it's shown. It's Luke and Ben, and they're talking to his old friend, and then you see what Ben is thinking, and it's this adventure with Anakin and Obi-Wan is kind of forgettable. It's just like, oh, we're taking out droids, and then after oh, happy ending, it cuts to the second after Vader cuts Obi-Wan down, and you realize that not only was Obi-Wan thinking when he was good friend, that was what he was thinking of. That's what Vader was thinking of when he cut
Yeah.
down Obi-Wan. It's like, oh, that one hurt. That one really hurt every single time. But yeah, no, that I guess I was one of the millions of voices, which that's rough, but there are a lot. There were like he said, there are millions of voices or billions of voices. Spectre of the Past, we kind of talked about a little bit. I I just think overall, Vision of the Future is better. I think Obi-Wan. Paradise Snare. So I just played KOTOR 2.
Okay.
And for some reason, I was in this mindset of like, am I gonna like Han Solo as much now that I've been with so many so many like Han Solo types, so many smugglers, and I've seen this trope done so many times.
Is he gonna feel special still?
Yeah, it's gonna feel special still. And this book was like, yeah, no, he's still the best. He's still there's no question. He's still the best
That's
one.
awesome.
You don't need Han. You do need Han. You don't need Chewie. You don't need Leia. You don't need the Falcon. You just need Han, and he's still the best there ever is.
Yes.
Oh, I have a very special place for the Paradise Snare. This is the one I've actually recommended to the most people. I got this for my brother-in-law, and I got this for my best friend Max, and they were both into it. So
that's awesome. Did you like that Han was close to Wookiees like his entire life, basically being raised by the female Wookiee on the ship?
At first, I thought it was a little bit weird, but as I thought about it, I was like, well, that's like the only way he could reasonably understand Wookiees is if he just learned the language at a really early age. So like that's actually perfect. And that was a really good character. That was really cute how they interacted. So
it was really sweet.
The other two books I really love. They're right here, but Paradise Snare is just it's perfect. It has all the elements of Han Solo you want. It has, him flying the ship, getting the girl, having the sidekick, but none of the ways that you think of. There's no Chewie, no Leia, like I said.
And Bria is a great character. And what's his name? The Togorian, who's his sidekick?
Murag, I think.
Murist or Murag, yeah. Something like that. There's an M in there and some weird cat sounds afterwards.
Yeah.
But yeah, terrific character.
I love both of them. They're so good.
Like, it's like when you start reading it and you're like realizing what role he's gonna fill. At first, I was kind of like, this isn't no Chewie. Like, who's this guy thing? By the end of it, I was like, geez, kind of wish he'd been in the original trilogy and he stuck around. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I was like, man, I kind of wish we could like see more of him. Maybe we could give him his own comic or own book or something. That would be awesome. With Brea now I'm not sure I'm as on board with Brea as others. I really like her as a character, but I do think that the back and forth with her and Han, especially in the later books, and this one it's fine, but in the later books it gets to be like, okay, at some point one of you has to make a decision about this.
Yeah, it drags on a little bit.
It does, but she's still a great character. She's still really interesting. Han has one of the best lines ever, where she's like, "You're not part of the one," and he's like, "Of course I'm part of the one. I'm just more of an individual one." And I was like, "That's great." I finished Kenobi. I think it goes Kenobi and then that. I finished some other book, and I jumped into Han Solo, and it was like 10:30, and I finished it in one night. It was like 4 a.m. by the time I was done because I just couldn't stop. I was like, "Oh, one more chapter. Oh, one more page."
Oh, those are the best. Have you found a lot of books in the EU that are just like you can't put it down?
Kenobi would have been one of those if I didn't start it the night before. I started at like midnight, and I got through the first chapter and was like, "All right, I will fall asleep if I keep trying to read this." But had it not been for that, I would have finished Kenobi in one night. Same thing with Plagueis. For some reason, a lot of the movie novelizations I was able to breeze through in one day easy.
Yeah.
What else?
Last Command's up there on the top.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, I really liked Last Command. I think I don't know what anyone else's opinions or like what the community's opinions on that are, but I actually really like Last Command, even more so than the other two. I just felt it was a good wrap up. It gave me it kind of delivered on what everyone was promising to me.
Yeah.
Revenge of the Sith is perfect. It's great. I mean, okay, it's not perfect, but it's close. It's got. I remember I got my friend Hal into Star Wars last year. I showed her all the movies, and she didn't really get invested until she hit the prequels, and that was like her era. I remember she bought Revenge of the Sith novelization, and within like 2 hours, I got a text like, "I'm in tears." I was like, "You get ready to continue that for the rest of your reading of this book." I remember the last confrontation with Obi-Wan and Anakin. I was just like I was like an infant. I was like, no. Even though I've seen that movie 1 billion times, I know that the scene backwards and forwards. I was like, it was like seeing it for the first time again,
Yeah.
and not even like taking on any of this other stuff in account. They're like, oh well, obviously this
Stover,
happened.
he
Yeah.
delighted in like tearing your heart out and stomping on it. Like it felt so intentional. I told him when I met him at Legends Con that after reading his book, I was like, they should make a movie about this. That's what I was thinking. And I was like, oh shoot, they already did. And it's like if they could have captured even a little bit of what this book was, would have been a better movie than the movie we got. Like is that a sentiment you echo, or which do you prefer, the movie or the novel?
There are parts of both that there are some parts of Revenge of the Sith that are of the movie, I should say, that feel a little bit cleaner and feel a little bit more polished. And that's just because, of course, Stover had to work off of like a rough draft and like a rough cut of the movie or
Yeah.
whatever. But still, like Dooku not begging for his life in that one scene, that's way better.
Mm-hmm.
But on the whole, it adds so much more depth and nuance
Mm-hmm.
and characterization. It's just better. It
Yeah.
really is just better. Not to say I don't like Revenge of the Sith. I love Revenge of the Sith. But the novelization, that's where it's at.
With Rebel Dawn, which you've gotten A tier, how did you like the ending that just leads like straight into A New Hope?
I really like that. I thought, if you're gonna do a second Han Solo trilogy, if you're gonna milk Han Solo like that, make sure it ends at the canteen. Just make sure we can't get a third Han Solo trilogy. But no, I think Rebel Dawn. It's tough because there are elements of Hut Gambit that I like more than Rebel Dawn, but I just think Rebel Dawn. That's just that to me is like the perfect Han Solo, where you get all the fixins,
Yep,
other than Leia and Luke, obviously, but you just you get everything else.
for
My
sure.
the thing keeping Rebel Dawn out of S tier was the stuff with Jabba.
Okay,
Not even
interesting.
at the very end where he doesn't want to kill Han, where he's not
Right.
angry. I was like, I don't agree with that. That shouldn't.
He would
I
have
don't.
been Han would have been toast if this was like Jabba.
Yeah, I was like, that's a little bit too much. And that's really the only thing keeping it. And also, it did jump around a little bit too much for my taste. I know it had to fit in a whole other Han Solo trilogy, but still,
Hmm.
it was jumping around a lot. But like, hey, top S or A tier rather. That's
No,
that's that's better than a
I
lot of these books.
I also see Maul Lockdown up there, which I'm very happy to see. Maul Lockdown's a book that I've had in my top 5 EU books all time before, and that's hard to do with how many I love. Really excited to see that up there. What did you enjoy so much about it?
Well, now this was one of the earlier books that I read because it's earlier in the timeline, obviously. Um, I It was such a nice change of pace to get like a really brutal Star Wars story.
Yeah,
And I really just liked Maul as the main character. You don't really get a little bit of that in Shadowhunter.
yeah,
I really like Shadowhunter too. Not to put that down at all, but I think that having Maul as the main character was really interesting, a really nice change of pace. I loved the brutality of it. I loved there was the line I always remember. I even wrote it down here. I think it was the very first note I took, a proper note. Because I didn't really take any notes on the Bane trilogy because I'm stupid. Um, it was it, this character is begging for his life, and Maul just looks at him and kill yourself and save the universe the trouble, something like that. I was like, that's man. Well, you drop that on somebody, you're ending it. Like,
Joe Schreiber is an absolutely brutal writer. You can feel the blood just oozing out of the text. Did you catch that there is a Yuzon Bong, a New Jedi Order connection,
I
right there at
did,
the beginning?
I did know about that. Um, I really liked that sequence. It was really cool.
Yeah,
It was a great intro to the book. I liked the fight with the Aqualish quite a bit.
that was really good. It was underwater, right?
Yeah, and he was like pulling the tusks out. Oof.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Like the way that Joe Schreiber plays with the anatomy of fictional species that still makes you like cringe, like, oh, that's gotta hurt. Like he's just masterful with it. And the Darth Plagueis connections they make the book just that much more elevated, I think.
So here's the one I should probably explain. Hard Contact. Uh, so I've not read Hard Contact since, would it be 2021? We'll go with that. I remember really liking it because it was really efficient and it developed all the characters well enough that I liked them,
Mm.
and the plot was decent. And then all of the other the Republic Commandos books had the exact opposite. And they were all bloated, and all of the characters sucked. Not all the characters. Oh man, but some of those characters really sucked.
Hmm.
And
They tried to do way too much in the later ones and kind of lost focus of the original intent of kind of like a self-contained story.
so like Triple Zero. So I was really excited for Triple Zero. I was like, oh man, we're gonna get Coruscant again, like we did in Shower. I can't wait to see that. We're gonna get the clones from the games,
Yeah.
which I really like that game. Um, we're getting more Mando stuff. This is gonna be great. And then I read it, and it was nothing for most of it. It was nothing for 200 some pages, and I was like, really? You needed all that extra space to not do anything with it. Um, and the one after that, whose name can never remember,
Hard
was also kind of,
Contact.
yeah. It was also like this one sucks too. Like this one is also like they were trying. What were they even trying to do? They were trying to kidnap somebody from like a war zone
Yeah.
or something.
And Cal Scarata got like really involved there, didn't he? Like really involved
Yeah, I
in
remember
that one.
liking Cal at first, and then as
Hmm.
the books kept going, I was like, all right, I'm done with this character. I don't want to see it.
It got tiresome pretty
Yeah.
quick.
But I'm willing to defend Hard Contact to a point. I think Hard Contact really efficient as a one shot novel. I think it's perfectly fine. I think it's great.
Yeah.
Um,
If the others didn't come, it would maybe be up there with Dark Rendezvous for like best Clone Wars one-off novel.
I would agree with that. Um, I think I should knock it down quite a bit because it's been up here pretty much since I started, and I don't really agree with this anymore. So
Mm.
you're watching live as I change my mind.
And on the fly, Al tier list change.
We'll keep it an A. Will we? No, we're not even going to keep it an A. Because I'm looking at these books. And I'm like, man, I actually like all these books. I'll say it's better. I liked it better than the Corellian trilogy. Because the Corellian trilogy was way too inconsistent. But yeah,
Yeah.
Upon reflection, thinking about that book, no, all of these are way better. Everything in here is way better than Hard Contact.
As I'm looking at your tier list, one of the biggest surprises for me on the entire thing that's really cool is you have the Black Fleet Crisis trilogy in A. Almost no one talks about the Black Fleet Crisis, and when they do, it's usually negative leaning. Now, I like the Black Fleet Crisis. Specifically, I like book 2 a lot, which was Shield of Lies. But overall, you don't really hear a lot of people talking about Black Fleet Crisis. So what put it in A? Was it all the Lando stuff?
The Lando stuff was a lot of it. To be fair, I kind of grouped them together
Yeah.
because I read them one after the other. Like for a week, I just went just one, two, three. The stuff with Luke's mom dragged a
Mm.
lot, to be fair, but at the
And it was
same time,
concerning to read. You were like, "Oh boy, continuity."
It was. However, I think they eventually handled it fine.
Hmm.
The stuff with Lando is really cool. It's really interesting. Um, and I really loved having Lobot hanging around.
Yes. Yes.
Um, the stuff I think they picked a great villain for that series because I wanted nothing more than the New Republic to just roll in and just be like, all right, we're the Empire now, and just nuke the
Destroy the
Yavin
Yavethans.
just from orbit. Because every single time, like, oh, but the reason why it's so high up is because this added so much detail and depth to the universe, way more than almost anything else of that era.
Of the
And
Bantam
like
era.
of the Bantam era. Now, to be fair, the X-wing books they add a lot too, but for, it just you got to flesh out not just Leia, but like her cabinet, and that was
Mm.
really interesting. You got to see you got to see Lobot again, which was amazing. You got to see Luke being irresponsible, which is status quo, of course. Um,
Normal
Han
Luke.
Solo, Han Solo being a great dad as usual, and then getting captured, which he kept doing at that time. Um,
Yes.
and then the Wookiee stuff, the Wookiee raid in Book 3. Oh, it was so awesome because Chewie had been missing the other two books. I was like, I got to make up for that. I
Mm.
got to have the best Chewie stuff ever.
Yeah. And it was at a time where they were like kind of struggling to write Chewie as well. Like when like in Crystal Star where Vonda and McIntyre literally like destroys him practically at the start of the book, so it's an excuse that he's not really in the rest of it. Like they were always trying to figure out ways to work around having to write Chewie. So yeah, it was nice getting Chewie stuff in the Bantam era, and that was pretty solid. I see the Corellian trilogy down in B. Uh, how did you feel about that? Because those are Black Fleet Crisis trilogy and Corellian trilogy usually get the head to head for like Bantam era stuff, and people are always like, "Oh, it's nowhere near the Thrawn trilogy," but like, which one's better there? So you've taken Black Fleet over the Corellian trilogy. What are your thoughts there?
So for me, Corellian trilogies is way too. It's not okay. Inconsistent's the wrong word. It's actually very consistent. The beginnings of the books are all really good. The middles are all terrible, and then the endings all slap. They all have great endings. It's just the middles that always suck.
They
Like
they drag on a little bit.
they just keep going, and they're always just lame. But once you start getting to the endings of each book, they always manage to wrap it up really well. So that's the note you're left on, at least for me. Is like that was pretty good. Is like the last thought I have. Like, oh, that was pretty good. Even though it took me a full week to get through the middle 150 pages. The last 50, I mean, that was pretty decent. That was a good ending. It was
Because of
again
this.
Han Solo getting kidnapped.
Yeah.
This is to make up for all the times he swings in at the last moment and saves the protagonist of random story. It's like, hey, I was in the area. All right, goodbye.
Even in Supernatural Encounters, as we talked about last week.
I mean, that's one of my favorite tropes. It's just that he did that for a lot of people. But yeah, I don't mind the Corellian trilogy. I think it's decent enough. I think it's
I think
fun.
it's good too.
I think again, it's inconsistent within it. It's just really some parts are really good, and then the middles are always a little bit weak.
All the solo kid stuff there is some of the strongest stuff, in my opinion.
I think, especially for when they're that young,
Yeah.
because like before that, you get just like, we put them in a cage over there, and we don't got to deal with them until the end. Um, X-wing books. I like the X-wing books. I am much more of a Wraith squadron than Rogue squadron.
Interesting. Okay.
Much more of a Wraith squadron. Not to say I dislike Rogue at all, but for me, the best part of the Rogue Squadron books is Wedge. But The Wraith Squadron have a little bit of an advantage because they have Wedge and they have Wes. And that's a dangerous combo because that's really good.
Wes Jansen really shines in X-Wing.
Of course, I can't disagree with anybody. The last one, Starfighters of Adumar. That's what I wanted. That's like, oh man, that's perfect.
It's the shortest, but it's the sweetest.
It's so sweet, and it really, you know, as much as I love Jedi Academy trilogy, Quizux. I don't know how to say it. I don't
That's
want.
how I say it.
I don't want to just call her Quee sucks because that's a little bit on the nose. But like that I don't think it was a terrible relationship, but like it just kind of happened and it just never went away through those books. It was nice for it to go away finally.
Yeah.
I
concur. I see the Dark Lord, the Rise of Darth Vader, is up there.
It's a little bit. I do have to. Looking back on this, I do want to change some of these positions. Dark Lord, I was underwhelmed with how little Darth Vader was in it.
Okay.
That was my big problem at the time. Maybe if I
focused a lot on the Jedi characters.
It did, and I was reading Dark Times alongside it, and I really liked Dos Janir, and I was not feeling Rowan Shine. I was like, not that it was a bad book, it was just, I can get a little bit better over in Dark Times.
Rowan to me was like the poor man's Obi-Wan, like the dollar general Obi-Wan kind of in a way.
Yeah, I couldn't disagree with that. Again, not that I dislike the book. I think the book's great.
Yeah, me too.
I just think that I would have preferred a lot more Darth Vader. Now, what else is in there? Truce at Bakura. I like Truce at Bakura. I think I've heard people poo-poo Truce at Bakura. I like it. I think Luke is really weird in that. I think Luke's really weird in that.
I mean, he's just buried his father basically. So like
that's true.
The
that's
week
fair.
prior.
That is fair. But I don't think it's as bad as people make it out to be. Even I make it out to be sometimes jokingly.
I really like Truce personally. I'm a huge Rook fan.
Oh yeah, that was really cool. That was really interesting. I really liked the Leia stuff with Darth Vader. I thought that was really interesting.
Yes.
Han didn't have like much specific stuff to do that I remember, but like all of it was good.
Yeah.
Like he didn't feel out of character or anything. He's
just kind of there, but you still read his lines as sounding like Harrison Ford. I think that's a theme throughout the EU. Like I can't think of someone who wrote Han Solo bad. Like he's always sounds like you can always see Harrison Ford literally saying everything or doing whatever they have Han doing. Like you can just see it.
Oh yeah, I think that goes like quintuple for the Han Solo trilogies. But like no, Truce Bakura is no slouch. What else?
You've got Courtship in there too.
I like Courtship. I did think Courtship dragged a lot in the middle, but I'm willing to defend Courtship.
Me too.
I think it's underrated.
Introduced Dathomir to the EU.
It did. I didn't mind Fabio as much as other people might have. He he was fun. I liked Tenennial Joe.
Yes. The mother of Tenel Kajo from Young Jedi Knights.
Absolutely. I really liked her. I thought she was fun. I thought she was a fun character. Han Solo kidnapping Princess Leia has always been one of those things. I was like, that's weird, but at the same time, like I could see it. That actually tracks.
Back Han Solo into a corner. He's got his back against the wall. He's going to do something unexpected, and I think that was one of those moments where he felt the walls closing in and had to do something.
I think the Courtship. I think Courtship gets a bad rap because it's sort of weird, but Star Wars is supposed to be a little bit weird. Return of the Jedi has a scene where Luke kills this big monster, and then you see the monster's like trainer come out and grieve for it. That's deranged.
The same movie where teddy bears kill stormtroopers.
And again, one of them watches its friend die and like tries to wake it up and then realizes it's dead and mourns it. Like, what? Stop, George! Stop it! Why are you doing this? It's weird. So, I don't know why that kept out, but like, yeah, Star Wars should be a little bit weird.
You've got down in C, you've got Revan,
Yes.
which is that lower due to frustrations with characterization compared to the game? Because that's like kind of the crux I see for a lot of people who aren't as big on the novel. Is that the case for you?
So as a novel, Revan is great. That's another one of those books that I almost went through in one day. If it wasn't for, I think I was reading it at the library while I was getting my tires fixed or something. If it wasn't for that ending and having to like, go and pay and do all that stuff, I would have been able to finish that in one day.
Yeah.
The problem is that, the retcons are so bad. They're so bad, and there's so many of them. And I don't like what they did with the exile. Again, the writing is the reason it's in C is because it should be an A. It should be an A based on the writing. But man, some of that's rough. Some of that's really the way they treat the exile is bad. I also don't care for I think is that the novel that jossed the idea that Aaron Kay was Kreia? I vaguely remember that being the case.
I think that comes from Revan. Yeah.
There were a couple of things. I'd have to pull up my notes to get all my like specific thoughts, but I just remember really like getting really into the novel, and then I'd read something like, "Oh, come on, what? Really?"
Yeah. And it's because SWTOR, while I love SWTOR, I think the idea and premise around SWTOR is great. It did create some problems with KOTOR. So they tried to bridge it here, but did it work great?
I'm willing to defend SWTOR quite a bit, but I do think, especially the stuff directly connected to Knights of the Old Republic was probably a mistake.
With Shadow of Revan?
Yeah, I don't know how I would have threaded that needle, so I can't say I don't want to be like, this is a way better idea. But man, it just brings down that whole era, because you read that, and especially because I went right from KOTOR 2 to that, so it's like just being slapped right in the face. I was like, oh my god, because now I've sort of forgotten some of the more egregious stuff. But like, were the KOTOR 2 companions mentioned at all? Maybe they could have got like a mention, but I don't even remember them getting that.
KOTOR 2 just feels really isolated, kind of.
It does.
In comparison to the rest, it's almost like they forgot that happened in the galaxy. So someone accidentally deleted some files from the archives.
It's such a shame, because I really like that game.
Oh, KOTOR 2's top 3 EU video game. It's better than KOTOR for me.
Oh yeah, I used to push back on that because I really liked KOTOR, but eventually I was like, nah, come on, nah. And of course I am famous. I am the famous Visas enjoyer. She's not actually my favorite character, but she is up there, to be fair.
Yeah,
I do like her quite a bit. But yeah, it sort of the same problem with Tatooine Ghost, to be honest.
Okay.
I know a lot of people don't like Tatooine Ghost. I don't blame them at all, because Tatooine Ghost is like it'll be like 30 pages of nothing, and then really good stuff with Shmi specifically. You get like this great stuff with Shmi, and you get a little bit of stuff with Leia and Han, and you get to develop their relationship a little bit. And then it's 30 pages of nothing, of just them wandering through the desert, being miserable. I'm like, this is not consistent. But that great stuff, that's really good stuff.
I actually really like Tatooine Ghost. I'm a Troy Denning fan, which is controversial within the fandom. Don't shoot me. But yeah, I like Tatooine Ghost. But like you said, it's a little stop-start at times.
It is. And it's not. I don't classify it as a bad novel. I think it's a fine novel. It's just it'll get some momentum and then bam, right into a wall. Um,
Mm.
it's also a little bit hard to reconcile what happens, but I don't think it's that big a deal. I
Like in
think you could,
regards to Thrawn?
not even in regards to Thrawn, but like with the stuff with Shmi, like it doesn't ever come up, so it's not that big of a problem. But like Luke and Leia knowing about Shmi is sort of weird. Before Thrawn, before the Thrawn trilogy, it's not a big deal at all. It's just sort of strange to think about.
Mm.
Um,
And also with Black Fleet as well.
right. Well, to be fair, that was the mother. So,
Yeah.
uh,
Now, Force Unleashed, you have there as well. You're a fan of the games, you said earlier. Was the novel just not doing it for you?
so okay. C. To be fair, C is like decent.
Yeah.
Like these are like perfectly fine novels. Um, so these two may not survive that categorization for much longer. But however long ago I updated this, they were fine. Um, Force Unleashed, Force Unleashed was the thing I was most looking forward to getting back to, because as a kid, Force Unleashed was like, oh, it was the coolest thing ever. I remember the first console I ever got was a Wii, and
Yes, me too.
I really wanted Lego Star Wars. I really wanted Lego Star Wars. I really wanted Lego Star Wars, and I got the Wii, and I got Lego Batman and Force Unleashed, and I was like, you split the baby on this one. Now I really liked Lego Batman, so I was fine with that. But Force Unleashed was like, oh, this is dumb. I wanted Lego Star Wars, and I started playing it. I was like, oh no, this is amazing. I don't even care about Lego Star Wars anymore. I want this. And then I bought it on PC however long ago. I was like, oh, this is gonna be great. And I started playing it. I was like, oh, this hasn't aged very well. This is very clunky and not at all what I remember about it, because it's not the Wii version, which I learned later. They're very different, apparently.
Yeah, the
Um,
Wii, the Xbox, the PlayStation, all different.
I still need to. I think they have the Wii version on Switch. I think I bought it, but I need to go
Yeah.
back and play it. I'm dreading it. I really don't want it to be. I really want it to be good. But
Yeah.
I was not on board with the PC version. Like, all right, this is like the secondary canon version anyway. It doesn't even matter. I'm gonna read the novel, and I started reading the novel, and I was like, this is just meh. This is not doing anything for me. Um, and I was really disappointed. I was really disappointed. I think if I was being fair, it probably could be like bottom of B or
Mhm.
top of C. But man, oh, it was such a letdown. Because I really liked the Force Unleashed as a kid. Rom Coda,
Oh,
Cassidy
such a
Brothers.
cool character.
Oh, they're all so cool. Oh, for me, Galen Merrick, Juno Eclipse, and Proxy are like three of like the biggest EU characters ever. But I don't actually like the game that much, apparently, as I have unfortunately learned.
As you've come to find out.
Yeah.
You've also got a step below that, Labyrinth of Evil down in D. This is one that people usually put like top 5, top 10 EU. I'm in the same boat as you. I think this is overrated. I was not wowed when I read this one. I would say it's towards the middle slash lower echelon. Like, it's still good. I still liked it, but it's just not great. So, what's your reasoning for putting it there?
Now, I'd like to. I was telling one of the people in the Discord who I showed this before. When I got to Labyrinth of Evil, I was done with Clone Wars. I was like,
You're ready to
am
move on.
I am so sick of all of this stuff. I am
Cestus
sick of
Deception and Jedi Trial led to that.
oh Jedi Trial and Cess Deception. I was like, this is I done over. I tried to read one of the TCW novels, and I was like, I will never do this.
I'd
Um,
give no prisoners a chance.
I think I tried to read Siege.
Okay. Oh no.
Yeah. So I was like, all right, no, never mind. I don't care. I read Labyrinth of Evil because I heard a bunch of people say, "Oh, it's so good. It's so good." And I think the overriding hatred of the Clone Wars I had at that point kind of kicked in, because I just at no point did it grab me. No point was like, "Oh man, this is amazing. This is so good." I was just kind of kept going. I was like, "Yeah, So I think I was a little bit harsh on.
I really resonate with what you said about it, though.
I,
It doesn't hook you in like others do.
it, I didn't really care about the plot with the chair. I was like, this is, I don't care. This is another book that I want to give a second chance to because I definitely think I was in the wrong mindset going in. I was not open to this book like I was a lot of the others. So maybe I'm being unfair. I'm completely willing to accept that. But at the same time, when I finished this, I was like, all right, finally, we are done with this horrible era. Because I kept getting pounded with the Republic Commando books because I'd finish a good book, I'd finish Shatterpoint. I was like, oh, that's great, and I'd read Republic Commando and I'd be right back in the gutter. Like, oh my god, oh stop. I'd read
um,
Yoda Dark Rendezvous. I was like, oh, this is amazing. Then I'd read whatever the other one is, and I'd just right back down.
it was up, down, up, down. Yeah. The Clone Wars era is the era where the comics are way better than the novels. Usually the
Undeniable.
comics are really solid, but usually I give a slight edge to the novels, like era by era. But the comics really dominated, I think, that era of Star Wars. Now, missing from this list is Dawn of the Jedi. Does that fit into F or E tier?
So Dawn of the Jedi. So the reason Dawn of the Jedi and Imperial Commando, there are a couple of novels that aren't here that I started or I got a few pages in, and I didn't feel that was fair at all to put them on here. That's not right. If I had finished Dawn of the Jedi, unless it really wowed me in the last however many pages, it would be right here, boom, right at dead last,
Where
absolutely.
it belongs.
Same with Imperial Commando. Like at that point, it would be like, oh, which one do I hate more? Um, uh, again, Rogue Planet's another one I'm willing to give a second chance to. I don't know if I was
Mm.
fair. I was fair to this. I don't care. I will not subject myself to that ever again. Um, Fatal Alliance sucks. Fatal Alliance also could probably be an F, but like, I don't know. I was having fun with it for a little while. I thought it felt like a D&D game to me. I was like, oh, this is fun. And then it just kept going for like 100, 400 some pages more. And I was like, all right, okay, all right. It is
There,
worn out its welcome.
me, and one other person named Arthur Lowry from the Discords usually watches this series of YouTube videos, so he'll probably comment below. Me and him, or him and I, are like the only two people I've met who like Fatal Alliance. Everybody else hates it, but me and him, or him and I, both really enjoyed it. Kind of oddly, like it's this odd thing. I can't explain it. I just found it fun.
I mean, it had its moments. The only books that did not have its moments for me are an F. E
Mm.
at least had, oh, there's some fun things like with
Like
the
a
Kit
scene
Fisto.
here or there.
Yeah, like the thing where they're showing off an approaching storm, or the
Yeah.
deleted scenes in Attack of the Clones,
Hmm.
or all the politics stuff in Cloak Deception.
Yeah.
I liked a bunch of the characters from Fatal Alliance. It was just when I finished the book, that was another time where I was like, all right, okay, time to move on to a different era.
And I think the fact that those characters really aren't mentioned again makes it feel quite isolated. Like, come on, some short story or comic somewhere could have like tied up what happens to those characters,
Yeah,
something like that. It just feels kind of stranded.
but yeah, if we already talked about Approaching Storm. Approaching Storm. I remember my friend Hal. She got, I think she bought Approaching Storm, and she got like 50 pages in, and was like, "This is torture." And I was like, "It's not getting better. Just throw it away." Um, I was like, "There's one scene. There's one cool scene, and there's a couple little moments with Barriss that are cute."
Mhm.
But the book as a whole is just like is just torture.
Yeah.
Um,
I think one of the biggest problems is Anakin's characterization is just really bad. It makes the prequels characterization look really good.
yeah, which sucks because I really wanted to like it. I really wanted Alan Dean Foster to knock it out of the park, but it just
Yeah.
was not for me. Um, a lot of people have pushed back on me for this, which I guess is fair, but I didn't get a whole lot out of the episode 2 novelization. I got the deleted scenes were good. I liked seeing those. But like I don't know. It didn't really give me anything. I was like, this is a little. This is mostly the movie, but with a couple neat scenes added. Dissuade me. Tell me I'm wrong, please.
I read it recently, and I thought the best part was the scene where his mother dies. It was written quite well, kind of differently, new perspective than the movie. That's a particularly well written scene, I think.
I loved the stuff with his family on Tatooine. I thought that was all very good stuff. I would have
Mhm.
loved. It probably couldn't made a full novel, but maybe it could have. Maybe a short, maybe a novella
An
where it's
ebook.
just yeah, an eve that would have been perfect to have those guys just living their life, having like that would be a great slice of life story, not like who's getting groceries for the clones, which is obscene. Um, but it just it would have been I just don't know for me if that's enough to really give it much props. I feel like the novelizations I could also go back. Although the episode 1 novelization, it didn't sell me on Qui-Gon, to be fair.
Mm.
I was always sort of mid on Qui-Gon, and then being able to see a little bit more through his perspective, I warmed up to him a lot. And then reading Jedi Apprentice, I love that character now. I am fully in camp Qui-Gon.
I
But
think it takes a real man to admit that they cried reading the Jedi Apprentice book series. I could not with those later books with Qui Gon.
I
Jude
couldn't with the
Watson
earlier books. I,
played with my heart.
the even so this is writing that takes actual skill is making me not care or not even like think about how this book takes place 50 years before episode 4. I've seen this story. I've seen the ending of this story. I watched Obi-Wan Kenobi die as a Jedi Master decades into the future. I can forget that. I can leave that at the door and still be like, "Oh, is Obi-Wan going to be able to make Padawan?" Even though he's a master, I
Yes,
know that
yes.
intellectually, but like emotionally, it's like, oh, but is he going to make Padawan?
And then when
That
he joins the Jedi Order and then leaves the Jedi Order, and you're going, no, you fought so hard for this, and you're just giving it up, but you understand his reasons, and then Qui Gon's disappointed. That's soul crushing to see Qui Gon disappointed with Obi Wan, and it completely changes your perspective on Episode One. You watch Episode
absolutely,
One, you're like, Qui Gon, he's cool. Liam Neeson with long hair, Jedi, that's cool. Cool fight scene at the end, but after reading Jedi Apprentice, you're like, oh no.
absolutely. That's like that is like the best part of the U is that it takes characters that you're sort of mid about. You're like, oh, I like
Mm,
Qui Gon because it's Liam Neeson. You're like, oh no, Qui Gon is like the best character ever made. Is like the best
yeah.
character in the history of characters. And that's like Mace Windu, Barriss Offee,
Yes.
all these characters that you get a little taste of them, but no, in the expanded universe, they get so much more.
They all get main character treatment. So we've taken a look at your novel tier list. Let's transition to talking about the Star Wars comic books.
Okay,
Uh,
all right.
what is your favorite Star Wars comic book series? That's hard. I know. So if you could limit it down to a couple of comic book series that are some of your favorites.
So again, I have visual aids here. If you give me just a moment, this is my
Oh
favorite.
yes.
Um, it to be fair, it's a little bit closer than I make it out to be sometimes, but no, no, it's this. It's Tales of the Jedi. I cannot deny Tales of the Jedi. It's one of my favorite comics ever made. I love I love every single issue of it. Of course, my friend Jake and I are the Uru people. We love our Urus. Um,
Yes. Great
big
character
Uru.
design. Just a brain with elf ears and tentacles.
Oh, he's so
Genius.
good. We love you, Uru. Um, but
Uru live action would have been amazing.
you can't tempt me with things like that. Um, but I'm a big defender of Golden Age of the Sith and Fall of the Sith Empire.
I
I
really like those.
I think they're great. I think they're underrated. My favorite Star Wars comic of all time is Tales of the Jedi Redemption. I know a few people think, oh, it's sort of it sort of ruins the the bittersweet ending of the main series. But I disagree. I think that completes the Star Warsness of it. It's like, no, Ulick did find his way back at the end. He did die a hero, and I think that's important. And I also think that that's important because this might be a real hot take. I didn't like Ulick during the main series. I was like,
Wow,
yeah, I
really?
know, right? I was invested in Kay. I was invested in Nomi. I was invested in Talk to Anita. I was like, Ulick is like whiny. I don't like him. It took
Wow.
until Redemption where I was like, oh no, Ulick's a great character. He
Nice.
just needs like a Kitty Pryde to his Wolverine. Um, but yeah, I did not care for Ulick at first. I liked all the other characters way more until Redemption. I was like, oh no, he's just as good, if not better, than a lot of those characters.
Did you see Ulick's death coming in Tales of the Jedi Redemption? And how did that impact you, given that you'd only just started to like him as you're reading the comic? And what you said about Tales of the Jedi Redemption is very true in a way, and it is divisive. To me, it's like the most unnecessary and necessary part of Tales of the Jedi all at once. Like we didn't need it, but we really did. You know what I mean?
Oh
It's
no,
kind of in that odd place.
I completely understand. So, um, because Star Wars is a lot of redemption equals death trope going on,
Mm,
I kind of figured something like that, but I was hoping against it.
okay.
And especially because Tales of the Jedi, one of the reasons I like it so much is that it plays with tropes in Star Wars that we don't get to see as much anymore. Strange creature is really the true Jedi Master. That happens
Yeah,
a bunch in the main
Thawne
series.
or
Thawne,
yeah,
Uru, of course, we always love Uru, and Voto Sias Bas all have the
yeah.
same trope going on, and I really like seeing that. And there were a couple others. I'd have to go through my notes because I noted them down at the time, but um, I kind of figured that Ulick was not long for this world. But even kind of feeling that going in, it still hit me like a brick when he
Mhm.
actually did die. I was like, oh, that sucks.
Yeah,
Not that sucks isn't like, oh, that's like cheap, but like that sucks and like
it
that was
hurt.
sad. That
Yeah,
hurt. Um,
for sure.
it also
Especially the way it happens too.
it literally just the guy comes up and just shoots him right in the chest. I was like,
It's so perfectly anticlimactic, like in the best way.
that not to dunk on Last Jedi any more than I already do, but like if you're gonna subvert my expectations, there you go.
Yeah,
Just because it's not that it comes out of nowhere. Because again, the trope of redemption equals death in Star Wars is really big, but like he was like in the middle of a conversation, just go and he goes
yeah.
out. Oh, um, and I liked Silvar in the earlier series,
Mm.
but again, in Redemption, that's where I was like, oh no, Silvar is amazing.
I
Um,
love Cathars, like one of my favorite species. So they were great throughout the Tales of the Jedi comics.
Absolutely, even though I think Exar Kun is either my fourth or fifth favorite Sith. He's up there. Depends on the day, but even though he's absent of that series, and that was sort of like what made me interested in that era was him. I think it works as a perfect like capstone to
Mm.
Ulick's story. Um, I do understand people like, well, it ruined the bittersweet ending, and if you were attached to that, I get it because the way that series ends, like Ulick is cut off from the Force and he just killed his own brother, and that's where the story ends, and that's brutal. It's like so if you were attached to that, I can understand not caring for redemption. But at the same time, seeing Ulick pick himself back up and train Vima, who's been a baby for most of the series,
Yeah,
you get to see her and get him like develop a relationship. It's really cute, and you get to see Nomi like come to terms like maybe I was wrong about who. It all just ties the
and
series together for me.
when I was reading it, I was really touched by Nomi and Ulick obviously had like the romance going on. Ulick could have been this father figure for Nomi the entire time if he'd resisted the dark side if he'd stayed in the light, he could have been her father. He could have been training her with the Jedi. He could have still had force sensitivity, and Uncle K would be there. But it just, the way that it happens afterwards just makes it feel so painful for what could have been. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. I saw Kay's death coming a mile away too, but it's another one where I was hoping against because I really liked Kay. I thought he was a really, really fun character. Because I didn't know about him before. I knew who Ula Keldroma was. And I knew who Nomi Sunrider was, but I didn't know who Tat Donita or who Kay Keldroma were. So getting to meet them and be like, oh, these are really cool characters. Watching Eula cut down Kay, that was brutal. And same with Voto Sias Pass. Like that was another one that really hit me.
Arca's death on reread also hit me really hard. Harder than I expected, because the first time I read it, I was just like, oh, the old guy's gone. Let's continue on with the series. But man, that really hit me. I just reread it a couple months back, and man,
the thing that really crushed me with it was specifically with Master Voto Sias Bas was that he really did try to get Exar to come back to the light right up until the end. He was sort of doing a reverse Yoda. Well, or maybe more accurately, reverse Ben Kenobi, where he's like, I don't want to kill you. I really don't want to kill you. I just want to bring you back to light. We can save you. And then he couldn't. He couldn't. He got killed for it. And I read the series digitally originally, so I remember flipping the thing and just and then the ending where Exar Kun is stuck in limbo forever. That was haunting. It's like,
yes,
that's crazy.
Had you read Jedi Academy or Tales of the Jedi first?
Tales of the Jedi first.
So when Jedi Academy, when you were reading that, were you super excited did he pop back up?
I tempered my expectations because I found out that Kevin J. Anderson was unhappy with how Jedi Academy treated Exar in retrospect. He was like, I wish I had written them in reverse order because Exar, I didn't write Exar the way I wanted to later. If that makes any sense. So I was like, okay, so this Exar is gonna be way more toned down than the one in Tales of the Jedi. That said, I still liked him. I still thought he was really fun. It was good to see him again. I'm trying to remember. I want to say I had some kind of issue with him in iJedi, but I don't remember what it was.
iJedi kind of just inserts itself in, which people love it or hate it, depending on really how you feel about the Jedi Academy trilogy. I'm one of the few people who just is kind of right down the middle. It's just kind of okay to me. And I think there's a lot of moments like that where it's just kind of tonally clashes in moments with the Jedi Academy trilogy. So maybe Exar's characterization was lost in translation a little bit.
I would agree. I would agree with that. I'm not like super one way or another about iJedi. I think it has a lot of really great moments, but at the same time, I was like, well, that's sort of like a clumsy retcon to Jedi Academy. Even though there are elements of Jedi Academy that are really weird, I don't think they need to be that forcefully retconned by like Corran Horn of all characters.
Yeah.
But that said, really liked how Exar was. I really liked Voto Sias Bas in seeing him again in Jedi Academy. I just the problem with the Jedi Academy appearance is that it's like at the very beginning, right?
Yeah.
It's like the first thing that happens, which is weird, but it's a great sequence. It's awesome sequence, and
very much so.
Yeah, no, I don't mind how Exar is portrayed in Jedi Academy. I think Kevin was a little too hard on himself. I think it was still pretty decent. Maybe a little bit more angry and frustrated Exar Kun than we saw in the Tales of Jedi series because he's been locked up in limbo for
5,000 years. Will do that to you. Yeah.
Yeah, just trapped, not being able to do anything. Yeah, that so maybe he's more like, all right, we're gonna do business rather than fair enough.
So aside from Tales of the Jedi, what are some of your other top expanded universe comics?
I don't know where the Epic collection is. I think I loaned it out, so I have to.
Oh
bring out the
yes,
big boy.
Let's go. Love it.
This is close second, to be fair. I'm going to reread both of them at some point in the near future, and then I will know for a fact which one I like more. But with Knights of the Old Republic comics, I kind of like the characters a little better in a lot of ways than Tales of the Jedi. That's just could because that could be because we focus on a smaller number of characters for a longer number
period
of
of
issues.
time.
Yeah. But like for me, Zane Carrick is right up there with Luke in terms of how much I like.
Yeah.
In terms of how much I like him. So is Terrell. So is Griff. It's just a really great series. It's just so much fun. The only story I don't like in that whole series is Vector, which is weird because I like all the other Vector stuff. It's just that one. That one piece of
I am completely in the same boat as you. I love Vector, but that is just not it. Maybe it's the art where Celeste Mornay's chin is like on the ground, practically.
It's a lot of the art, but like even Rebellion, which I kind of have a very low opinion of. Even Rebellion's portion of Vector is better than Knights of the Old Republic, and that's no good. We can't be doing stuff like that.
How do you feel about War? Because some people aren't as huge a fan of War in comparison. It's kind of tonally a bit different. I never felt like War was the perfect ending. I felt like there should have been something else after it. How did you feel in regards to War?
So I don't mind War. I think War is fine, but having it be attached to the end of Knights of the Old Republic, where it's sort of the ending of the series, is such a mistake, because you go from a really great ending with KOTOR number 50, which is like one of my favorite endings in the whole expanded universe, and you go into KOTOR War, where you don't have where most of the cast is gone. It's just Zane, who I think is fine, who would be fine to just lead his own series, but it doesn't. I want to see everybody else now, though.
Yeah, and they had this little cameo at the end where it like really hints that Jerael and Zane are together, which made me very happy.
Same.
But I wanted more. I want to know where Zane and Jerael's kids ended up. You know what I mean? Like, what happened to them?
I want to know what happens when KOTOR 2 happens and the Jedi are wiped out. Because I don't want Zane to be a part of that. I also don't want Zane. I remember people were like, "Oh, Zane turns into Darth Nihilus." Absolutely not. No.
I heard that theory on Reddit, and I was like, man, if that isn't a Reddit moment of all time, to see a theory this
doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
Oh, so I would need a 6-issue follow up to KOTOR to make sure no one else ever posed that theory ever again, please.
Yeah. Maybe it could have been like, yeah, Zane dropped out of the Jedi Order, Ahsoka Tano style, you know, like officially dropped out. You know,
anything would be better than he turned into Darth Nihilus, which I don't think anybody likes. I've never heard anyone be like, "Oh, that's awesome! I can't wait." No, everyone's like, "That's bad. That sucks."
Yeah. So,
yeah.
Other than KOTOR, any other comics that you want to discuss?
I have Dark Empire over here as well. I'll give a little shout out.
Nice. Is that the hardcover?
No, this is the soft cover. Unfortunately, I've been trying to track down the hardcover, but I have not found it. I think I got this for $30. I don't remember, but I could not find the hardcover for anything
reasonable.
Anything approaching reasonable, unfortunately. But one of these days, I'm looking forward to that Marvel omnibus. The only good thing I can say about Marvel with those omnibuses. But yeah, to be fair with Dark Empire, I like Dark Empire 2 and Empire's End, but not nearly as much as the first series.
No,
they lose a lot of steam, which is unfortunate because I really like Dark Empire.
Me too.
I think the art's amazing. I think the characters.
Same.
The stuff with Luke turning the dark side, he doesn't turn to the dark side. He's doing a bit the whole time. He even says like This is like he's trying to understand why Anakin fell to the dark side. People are like, "Oh, that's dumb." I'm just saying that's not how it was explained. I'm just saying.
And for people who don't like Palpatine's return, later on, I think in one of the New Jedi Order books, Mara's like, "I'm still not convinced it was really him." You know, so they
say
even
that as
leave it
early
up.
as Vision of the Future.
Yeah,
They're disputing that.
That's where it was because it's with the Thrawn thing going on, and
Yeah.
that's where it was. Yeah. Yeah, Dark Empire is really cool. And why do you think that the art gets so much kind of flack from a lot of people? Do you think I've always attributed it maybe to the coloring, but at the same time, I really love it personally. So what do you think?
It has to be the coloring. That's the thing that is sort of weird about Dark Empire. That's my favorite part, to be honest, is the weird coloring. I think it's really cool. I
It
think
makes it feel off balance and like uneasy almost. It sets the tone.
Something about it doesn't. It's hard to explain. It shouldn't feel right for Star Wars, and yet it feels perfect for Star Wars. It's so it shouldn't work, but it does.
Yes.
But it has to be the coloring. It has to be the coloring. It has to be Palpatine coming back. However, one of those is like not even worth discussing anymore because Palpatine keeps coming back no matter the continuity.
Yeah.
You can't stop him. Can't keep a good man down or bad man in this case.
Can't keep Palps down.
He just won't stop. He just won't stop coming back. I'm just saying one of these explained how it happened and the other one didn't. I'm just saying. Just throwing that out there. Just saying.
Yeah.
Again, I'll keep it to a minimum, but just saying.
I agree with you there. It's kind of our final topic as it is getting very late for both of us.
Same, yeah.
What video game would you point to as your favorite? Would that go straight to KOTOR, or would you give pause for consideration to any other video games within the EU?
Now, to be fair, I'm not much of a gamer, so
Me neither.
my word on this is probably not worth a whole lot. But for me, I would say Knights of the Old Republic 1 and 2. I would acknowledge that 2 is better overall. However, it is garbage when you play it without the content restored. It does kind of fall apart. Which, to be fair, playing the first game on PC was also kind of a nightmare. It does not run very well anymore. But I played a little bit of KOTOR 2 on Switch, and I was like, this is not good. This needs the other stuff.
Yeah.
But I don't separate them. Like I think KOTOR 1 and 2, you should play both. They're both good. They lead into each other. All of the characters are good except for Goto and McCall. But everybody else, and McCall isn't even that bad. Goto is the one that's bad. They're all great. They're all really interesting. They all have great backstories and designs. And Visas Mar is the best character in all of Star Wars other than Uru. So like what else do you need?
I mean, really, that's a perfect note to end on. Just Uru and Visas Mar.
That's what I'm known for, apparently. So may as well lean into it.
Thank you so much for taking all this time to talk EU with me, and really interesting getting to hear your thoughts. You've had a really cool journey into the EU, and we'll have to do this again sometime in a couple of years when we've gotten through New Jedi Order, Legacy of the Force, Fate of the Jedi. Talk about
hopefully
those.
When I've made videos that are actually substantive. But thank you so much for having me on. This has been a great time.
Of course. Can we expect some videos maybe on Archive Panic?
I do have a couple of ideas. However,
okay,
they require work, and I need to put that into them. So we'll see.
So
coming soon.
Go follow Archive Panic's channel. Go subscribe over there. Something could be coming in the future. It sounds like that'll be linked below. And once again, thank you so much for joining me for this. And check out Al on Superliterary Encounters. We'll both be over there nerding out over that. And thank you all for watching. And we'll see you guys next time.